Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Committed Critics, a pop culture podcast. We're not only committed to our opinions, but also each other. Aww. I'm Kevin Lau.
I'm Ryan Davis.
And I'm Zachary. And boys, get it? The boys.
Oh, no.
Sorry. I'm tired.
So proud of that.
Oh, no. Because you literally just got back from work, didn't you?
Yeah, I just got off at work like 30 minutes ago.
Did you at least get like a power snack or something?
No, I really just walked in and sat down at my computer.
Oh, well.
You poor
The
man.
grind don't stop.
It's all about that grind.
The grind don't stop.
But you can make it stop so you can take a break. Self-care is important too. Grind for that self-care.
I wish I had time for self-care.
But yeah, as Zach referenced, today we are talking about The Boys, the comic, not the show. Specifically, well, actually, how far did you guys read? Ryan said the first challenges for the first volume. I just read the first omnibus, so the first 14 issues.
I did too.
That's
why I read too, yeah.
Oh, okay, good. We're all on the same page.
Yeah, we're on the same
All right. Nice. So yeah, the first 14 issues of The Boys. What were our thoughts? What score will we give it? Ryan, do you want to kick us off?
It's something, all right. I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. I was like, can I give it a 4? And I'm like, no, because after rereading it, I was like, man, this was weird. Like, it's more interesting a conversation point than it is like exciting.
Right.
And I think that's kind of why I wanted y'all to read it, because I was like, I just want to hear what their thoughts on it.
I have thoughts.
Oh, I have thoughts.
Like, I love the subverting superhero genre, but like if the show is like taking that to an 11, this is like kicking it up to like 11,000. Like,
yeah,
it's interesting. Like,
like there's no barrier, but there kind of is. That like it creates a barrier for itself, though. It's very weird. I'll talk more about that later.
barely though. Just
Right off the rip here, I'm just gonna say I will have no objective rate or score of The Boys because like I don't find to be anything of value in The Boys as a comic or property, period.
Gotcha.
So I will be very sour. I'm gonna be very like ranty. So tell me when to stop when I get very ranty because
Jordan, take Zach's microphone.
Like honestly,
take over, Jordan.
I will just go on a tangent. We'll argue about like Star Wars and stuff. Like no, I will definitively say that like no, there's nothing of value here. I won't change my mind. I
will say there is very little value, but like it doesn't stick to that value. I have a point.
Yeah.
Anyways, Ryan, go on.
Sorry, Ryan. I was just gonna say the response to that, I think there's value in the show. In the comic, not as much. The comic is more for shock value and just kind of graphic, like comic. Like it's the graphic novel, graphic comic, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Book. It puts the graphic in graphic novel.
Yeah, like they were just like how messed up can we make people read this? It's like, do you like DC? We're gonna take DC and make it like if you think Injustice is bad, this is on a whole nother level.
Well, it's not even that. It's not even just like to a point. Like, and we'll get into spoilers in a second, but like The Boys is supposed to be like this, like have this subversion of superhero expectations and genres. And it could be done really well, like in Invincible, but it just wants to do it for the sake of being edgy and like showing that like grotesque and just gross stuff for like no reason at all, when a very simpler and more like concise expression of that like subversion could be like stated and expressed instead of just like an orgy.
The way I saw it is that the usual superhero trope is basically a form of socialism where those in power try to use their power. Those with power, superpowers, try to help people who can't help themselves. The Boys is more like a capitalist approach to the superhero genre, where it is those in power just try to do things that become more powerful. But like and that's the part where I think it has a little bit of value, where it's like, okay, it's like a reflection of different economies. Right. However, it doesn't really have like a target audience, I think, because it's like, because I'm reading this, I'm like, who is this for? Is this for people who like edgy who wish like superheroes were darker, or is this for like to hold a reflection to those who are actually shitty people?
Right. And what message is it trying to get across? Because like it doesn't stick to that value like you're saying, like that reflection of like an economical like state in a
It's like if a rich terrible person read this comic, they wouldn't. There was nothing to make them think about self-reflecting at all.
right.
If someone who doesn't understand that this is what the metaphor is for, they're not going to get anything at all either. Like there's a weird middle ground that it kind of sort of hits, but it slips at the end of it with the end of the Tech Knight story. Spoilers, right. I guess.
Right, and adding on to what like you said about I just lost my train of thought. What Ryan's about the show doing it a little bit better than that. Like I enjoyed season 1 back in the day, but now I just can't bring myself to watch it just because like what they do in the show is a little bit different than the comic per se. And
yeah,
so,
I
like,
watched some clips of the show. I'm like, okay, like this feels better than the comic.
But the draw of the boys just doesn't work anymore.
Well, I think like the show at least like decided let's make these characters actually like one thing I noticed in the comic that is different from the show is that the show fleshes out these characters as not just mindless like the boys aren't just like let's beat up all the superheroes and the superheroes aren't just let's have as much debauchery as we can.
Right.
Like it fleshes out these characters, makes some of them a little bit more likable, some of them a little bit more detestable. But like honestly, I feel like the comic makes everyone more detestable. Like there's barely any redeeming qualities in any of these characters, except for maybe Huey and Starlight.
Well, I mean, like,
all right, let's get into full spoilers. Full spoiler warning right here, right now for a little bit of the show and a little bit of the comic. Just full spoilers if you don't want to.
I mean, like, spoilers. I haven't seen the show, so
okay,
no spoilers of the show.
Yeah.
But what I do know of the show, like, I just know like interviews with like the showrunner and all that stuff, and it feels like knowing the interviews of the showrunner, I feel like there is still like a misinterpretation of like what the story of the boys could be.
Yeah.
I mean, like, okay, so I mean, like, real quick, like my initial thoughts and review score, I give it a 3 out of 5. I liked it more than I thought I would. Like I said, there was that like there's still some elements of stuff to it. Like, okay, this is kind of interesting, but the story feels very jumbled in the first 4 issues. Like the first 4 issues is a complete mess in terms of the order of the story points. And then like once they get to issue 5, when the bad guy, quote unquote bad guys, get their comeuppance, and then the whole Tech Knight story, like I thought that was interesting until the end of the Tech Knight story, and then once they went to Moscow, I kind of lost interest again. There's too much focus on Butcher, considering like how little we know about him even after 14 issues.
Yeah.
They're the more interesting characters are Starlight and Huey, who are basically audience surrogates because they are basically the quote unquote pure people. Like they're the better people that we see, but there's so little focus on them that's hard to really get a good connection.
And that's what the show does a better job of. Like the main protagonists are really Huey and Annie and Starlight.
Okay.
Those are the main protagonists, with like main antagonist being Homelander. Like we don't see Homelander at all besides the one part in this, like these 14 issues.
Yeah, there was like 3 instances we saw Homelander, which I will say Homelander is a very well written villain. Because like we don't know his motivation yet or anything like that, but like so far, like having as an ominous threat, he's very well done.
Yeah, he's definitely like he's way more looming threat. Yeah,
he's way more ominous in this than he is in the show. Like in the first season, he's a little bit more ominous, but he like still comes to the forefront as a villain. And in the second season, you just kind of like, you're kind of like pathetic.
Oh, okay.
Well, not even that. Like to build off what Ryan just said, there really is no like quote villain in these 14 issues. Like you could like, it's just the boys trying to take down a certain like hero, and like that's really it. Like, and the season 1 makes Homelander that main force because of his relationship with Butcher, which we don't know anything about in the comics yet. Tongue-in-cheek reference right there.
It's kind of it's hinted at. I think it's in the middle of the Tech Knight story, I think, when Huey asked why Butcher's doing it. But then like I read like the synopsis of like the final volume. It's like Butcher's real plan is revealed. I'm like, oh, there's still more to it. Okay.
And like I've gone up to like the 3rd omnibus. The second if you think the first omnibus is messed up, the second one is worse.
I completely I believe that. Like it just gets more and more gratuitous as it goes on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I heard like That's why I'm worried about the show. I'm not as worried about the show anymore, is because I'm like, all right, they just said we're not gonna do what this comics is. We're taking the source material,
adapting
putting
it.
some of the elements in there, but mostly doing our own thing.
Well, yeah, some of the stuff from season 1 has already like okay, so sorry, stuff from like these issues we've seen are in season 2. We don't see any of it in season 1.
Oh, okay.
And like so like the when they just those heads randomly explode and like those toward those later issues.
Yeah,
That's not a thing until season 2 of The Boys.
interesting.
Yeah.
So the show is very slow. With what I'm hearing.
Well, no, the show just like streamlines it. It makes it more of a like here's the greatest hits, and it makes it more into a like digestible narrative.
Gotcha.
Yeah, kind of like how
quotes.
Invincible is like it's out of order. Like it's not following that.
Like it's
slower
remixed,
pace.
but like it makes sense in terms of like the storytelling.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I would say Invincible, from what I've read so far, does do that idea better than The Boys. Although The Boys is more, I feel like it takes its more original spin on it, while Invincible stays more true to the comic roots.
I mean, the
don't think the
Invincible show is written by Robert Kirkman too.
Right,
so
exactly. Yeah,
makes sense.
Well,
I
also
don't know how
think the
involved
boys
Garth
couldn't
Ennis is with the Boys show.
Ryan, what are you
The
trying to
boys
say?
couldn't have translated everything from the comic into the show, though.
Well, yeah, duh. Yeah, there's a lot of things like Butcher is way more. It's funny because like Homelander and Butcher in the show compared to the comics are vastly different.
Really?
Like, you don't know a lot about Homelander in the comic, but you know more about Butcher. It's almost the reverse in the show. You know more about Homelander than you do about Butcher,
Interesting.
which is
And I also
I feel like
keep going.
that doesn't work.
it does, quote unquote, like you understand why Homelander's
because you were also saying that like the focus is more on Annie and Huey in the show.
yeah,
I guess it does
basically
make more sense.
Butcher is more of like a
The secondary.
a secondary to Huey, like a foil to Huey, basically showing like the difference, like what Huey could become if he keeps going down Butcher's path, kind of like that kind of foil.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And like kind of like setting up, I believe later in the comics, Butcher actually becomes a villain for Huey, I think. Don't quote me. I think I've read that somewhere.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. Like that's kind of like looming threat, and then Homelander is more of the most like apparent direct threat and trying to capitalize off that like bad Superman idea. So they make him the more like main antagonist and like flesh out his relationships and like what makes his head tick and how like just effed up he is. Not to humanize him by any means, but to show him like to show his motivations and his relationship with Butcher and like why he does the things that he does, quote unquote, which is a weird way of putting it.
Yeah, no, I
Something
get what you're saying. I feel like with though, like, go ahead, Ryan.
I was gonna say something I say about Butcher, like reading at least the first volume, is that like he's like it's weird because like in both series he starts off very like, all right, this guy's kind of like okay, like he's definitely like got issues, but you're like, all right, you kind of root for him, and then like you slowly see, yeah, this dude's just terrible. Like
Right.
the worst thing ever.
And I think it's like Ryan, you'll probably recognize this more. I feel like Homelander is like in the show is way more like smiley fake, like I will stab you in the back. Whereas in the comic, he's more of a kind of like a straight man. Like he's a bad guy, obviously. And Butcher's the inverse, where like Butcher in the comic is like all smiles, like, oh, this is just like not all smiles, but it was more like that fake smiley and will turn on you. Whereas in the show, Butcher is just a gruff Carl Urban, like that's just his type.
Gotcha.
Jeez, that is Carl Urban. I keep forgetting that.
Yeah, it's a weird flip for sure. And like, so my basic thoughts are just I'm abstaining from scoring. Like I said earlier, I can't objectively rate The Boys just because it doesn't fit my personal taste. And like the content itself and graphic nature isn't what bothers me. It's just how heinous they write these characters to be, just for the sake of writing the characters to be just this heinous. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll hear more of me rant after the break. What we did not enjoy, obviously. But yeah, that's just my initial thoughts.
Yeah. I mean, like, as I was saying, yeah, I mean, we talked about it. Like, I wish they would swap the story points around, make the characters more sympathetic. Very, like, you know, with the whole, like, how like, that, especially the ending of the Tech Knight story, how it doesn't, like, fully go through with its themes.
Right.
It doesn't follow through with its themes. If it's like, I'm a bit confused of what the story as a whole is trying to say. Like, I think I don't have a need to like finish the comic, but I think I'll just wiki the ending.
Yeah.
Here's how I
when it
describe
comes-
the boys. Oh,
Go ahead, Ryan.
no, sorry, Kevin. Go.
Oh, I mean, just when it comes to the show, it's still a very low priority for me to check out, which because it's like what I love about superheroes is it shows like what the good people, what good people are capable of, like what we should strive to be as
Right.
individuals. Whereas when you make, let's say like if you make Superman more evil or make him more vulnerable, if you turn the superhero culture into like a bunch of like flawed people, it just keeps us from pushing ourselves to be better. Like it's
Yeah.
like, oh, like Superman like killed a guy, then like, he's
It gives
not
us the
perfect.
excuse. And
Yeah.
like for me, like it's like we already know like what heinous people can do in real life, in reality, right?
Right.
We already know
Right.
we already know.
And this
what,
is
yeah.
like, like I feel like the boys would be the example of like this is what heinous people can do when they're given power and they don't understand how to use the power responsibly. But like it doesn't hold a mirror to those people at all. It's just more like, man, look how screwed up they are. It's pretty wild.
Ryan, what were you gonna say?
Well, first point I was gonna say was that I think I call the boys like a comic that you just turn your brain off to. You either just read it for like, or read it just to see like, oh yeah, I just want to see like the most disturbing like superhero story parody ever.
Yeah.
But also to pull off on Kevin's point about the whole like not having a lesson, I saw this quote. Actually, Kevin liked it earlier, but on Twitter.
Oh.
But it was people want an evil or fallen Superman because they don't want to ask themselves why they aren't better, why they aren't kinder or more empathetic. If our most aspirational figure is a fallen icon, then we don't have to expect much from ourselves either. And I'm
That's
like,
Yep.
good.
yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I agree, and I totally just lost my train of thought and ruined that transition into the break. So I apologize.
Well, on that note, let's take a break. Starting a podcast? Try a Podbean Unlimited hosting plan. It's what we use here at Committed Critics, giving us the opportunity to have our show on Pandora, iHeartRadio, and even Spotify. You can get your first month of unlimited hosting for free on us by going to podbean.com/committedcrits, just like our Twitter, or by clicking the link in the description. Podbean, the easiest, most affordable option to get started in podcasting.
Don't you wish there was a pop culture review site that appealed to cinephiles, both professional and casual? Well, look no further than crpwrites.com. New content such as movie and TV reviews, film essays, and more are released every week by writers who crave for movies like every moviegoer craves for popcorn. CRP Writes is dedicated to making sure no one is wasting time or money where they shouldn't be. After all, you have to be able to buy your popcorn and eat it too. crpwrites.com. Casual reviews with purpose since 2018.
And we're back, guys, and break out your headphones, everyone, because I'm about to have a rant.
Yeah, I don't want your parents to hear this one.
You don't want your parents to hear like how freaking vulgar this show and this comic is. My God. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I don't like The Boys anymore. I dug season 1 back in the day. I thought it was a fun take on it. But as I've gotten older, and like we talked about before the break, like I don't care for it. Like you guys said earlier, why show what the worst of people can be when we already have seen the worst people can be in real life? Like superheroes are used to show like how good we can be and to let us strive for something better. Yeah, I don't need that anymore in my life. The XX use of graphic imagery doesn't really add anything to the overall message or theme. It's there purposeful for the shock value intensity. Like for example, the comic. So for example, like the Team Kicks' orgy, like it doesn't really add anything to the idea of wow, but like they're just mistreating these people. Like you can get that idea across in a better, more like meaningful way besides just showing these superheroes just getting down and dirty with a bunch of different like women.
Instead of showing it so directly.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you could have done this a lot better than just like the murder of Robin is done a lot better, a way of showing like, wow, this superhero is terrible. Like he just runs away and doesn't really deal with it.
Yeah.
The comic
Because
itself
it's like the concept of horror. Like the scariest thing is your imagination, not what's. If you show
What you're
show the
actually
audience
seeing.
something, if you're showing the audience exactly what's going on, then it ruins the impact.
right, yeah. And I think the comic itself is a worse offender of that in the show. Like before the break, Ryan, you said this like The Boys is kind of just like a comic you just turn your brain off to. I can't because I don't understand what's going on. Like I have to like keep like my brain on to try to like, it's like the worst kind of torture. Like I have to keep my brain on to understand what's going on, like story wise, because it's so jumbled.
Right.
Not because
Right.
like I need to take in what all the graphic stuff is going on, anything like that. It's just like the story is such a mess. I can't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
So I have to focus and like pay attention.
Right.
So like I agree with like it is a way if you can understand it like past that and just turn your brain off. Good for you. I can't, like Jesus. These plot lines and story beats just don't line
Right,
up. Yeah.
I mean,
ahead.
as like comic book critique, it's like there's no visual storytelling to it.
No.
Like you cannot tell what's
Yeah.
going on just by the panels alone.
You are just reading
which
the
is-
dialogue boxes and thought bubbles just verbatim, and like they're not on an order at all.
Right.
Yeah. The assault on Starlight, for example, I'm really honestly shocked to God we didn't see any schlongs. Like seriously. Like
Can't sew a schlong in the comic book, I
no,
guess.
you can you can show some titties, but you can't slow a schlong. Sexism right
Well, you
there, guys.
can. You couldn't before. Apparently, you can now.
I mean, I think it just depends on the publisher.
Yeah. At least with Invincible, the graphic gore is to show like just how Mark isn't invincible. Like it's to show like that stark difference, and like it's used to like drive home the like one of the comic's purposes. The Boys just does it because it can, and there's no reason for it. And honestly, it just
Right.
isn't meaningful content. And like we're always saying like junk food content. Like I would say I'd put the Boys in the category of junk food content. Like even more like not more so than Star Wars and most mainstream content. Like that is all junk food and just being pumped out to
Right.
us like Marvel movies. The Boys actually doesn't add anything. It's just a candy bar.
Right. Like I said, like it could. Like there is like I read the first omnibus. I'm like, okay, there is
Yeah.
something here. But toward the last arc of that omnibus, I'm like, where is this going? Like I don't understand anymore.
Well, right, yeah.
It's
It's,
so
like a candy bar.
close.
A candy bar has carbohydrates, and carbohydrates could like make your muscles bigger. But if you don't eat right and do anything else with it, it can just make you bigger.
Yeah,
That's really it.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like I think I've talked about this before on the show too. Like Invincible, I like the way it uses graphic violence because it shows it brings you into the moment of like, oh, like there's a threat here. Like people can die. And they're but like it's not, and it's just not physical stakes. It's also emotional stakes because these are Mark's friends or Mark himself that you care about these people. Like you don't want them to die, or because
Go ahead.
so yeah, it just keeps you on the. It's exciting and keeps you on the edge of your seat. In
Right,
Invincible.
and it's like people say like there's no stakes in Marvel movies because no one dies. The Boys is even worse offender of it because like you see someone die all the time and you're numb to it by the time like oh that guy died, all right, cool, whatever.
Yeah.
Like
Kinda
it's
like,
the opposite of Marvel movies.
Kind of like the Suicide Squad by James Gunn a little
Yeah,
bit.
exactly. It's just
I
there
kind of
to
got
do
this.
it.
I kind of got that vibe too, like kind of like a James Gunny vibe from reading
Yeah.
this comic.
Honestly, that's why I
this is-
can't bring myself to watch Peacemaker, to be honest.
Oh, I don't even want to watch that.
I hear Peacemaker's actually very good.
I hear it's really good, but like I just don't want to deal with that type of like dark comedy,
Yeah.
you know, black comedy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Also,
I'll
can we
see
talk
if
about
I can watch
the
it by
Russian
the
man
next
saying the N word?
by next time record. What?
Can we talk about the Russian man saying the N word?
Oh, I must have
that
glossed
was-
over that.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
very
Because
I was
it was
like,
definitely
whoa.
when we got to Russia, I was like, my mind was just like, all right, just look at the pictures, see what happens next.
yeah, your mouth was just goop.
You turn your brain off.
Yeah. Because the story just became so uninteresting. Like, what is the driving force
Well,
here?
it just came out of nowhere. I was like, what? Why is he saying
like
this?
at least like Team Kicks, you're like, okay, they they want to like show it, like send a message essentially to get the Seven's attention. And they're like, okay, cool, we got the Seven's attention. What's next? Russia. So-
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, I
What a
was like,
comic.
yeah, the N word just gets dropped out of nowhere. I'm like, who wrote this comic and why are they using it? Like, what?
I mean, I think it's just used to be edgy. I mean, Garth Ennis.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's just to be edgy.
Garth Ennis does write good comics. I still need to check out Preacher
I don't
because
believe it.
But he has one comic. It's a mini series called Sarah that was published with TKA Studios. That one is very good.
Okay.
It is a story following a female sniper team in World War II. Very well done. I think it's getting a sequel as well. I think I also got there might become a film adaptation as well.
Oh,
like,
he
that
did
is a-
Punisher. That makes so much sense.
I don't think he created. Did he create Punisher? I know he wrote Punisher.
So he's best known for the Vertical series, Preacher, and his 9-year run on Marvel Comics' Punisher franchise.
Oh, it's a big run.
Big run.
Punisher.
All right, well, I'm done with my rant. You got next person can go.
Okay.
Oh, you go.
Punisher's not that bad. It's just Punisher has a bad like fan base, I think. Well, I mean, there's people that there were like people who use the Punisher symbol not knowing what actually Punisher stands for, kind of
Real
deal.
quick, hang on. Just to add one more thing, I'm looking on his Wikipedia page. It says right here under Marvel Comics, Enos's first work for Marvel was Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe. So there we go. That's on brand.
So he started off writing Punisher.
Yeah.
Oh, for Marvel Comics. He did DC before that. He took over Hellblazer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he didn't create Hellblazer?
No.
Gotcha. Okay. All right, moving on.
Kevin, what are your thoughts?
Where did my notes go? There it is. The comic definitely leans too much into sexual themes, I think, because because it leans in it so much that it starts feeling like the book is anti-sex in a way, because every sexual act that is shown in the comic is framed as disgusting, and the bad guys don't do anything else bad. It is like the only bad thing they do is somehow involves sex. So, and then obviously there's like a bit of outdatedness to it because this comic came out in 2006 about like homosexuality, framing it as like a bad thing. That's a whole other conversation. That's when I'm like, okay, product of the time, like whatever. But still, like, yeah, every time someone engages in sex, it is framed in a bad way, and plus the art is kind of disgusting as well. And not in like a way it's like, oh, look at how grimy reality is. It's just more like, no, like the phases are inconsistent. There's no like, I don't have like a sense of like depth.
It looks smushed in.
Yeah, there's no like real depth to the frame. There's no like when there's you don't really feel the movement going on. It's like I think the art is just not very good. But yeah, I think that's
the gist of it from Kevin.
That's the gist of it. Like, yeah, I said a lot in the first half too, where it's like, this is like, it could be about superheroes, but with the capitalist system, whatever.
Yeah.
But like, and like, it kind of does that for a little bit, but then it forgets that it does that. And then like, it becomes nothing at the end.
Yep. Ryan?
I do have I have a question because I have my own thoughts on it, but first I want to hear you guys. How did you feel about the boys having powers as well? Because me and Zach know they don't have powers in the show.
Oh, really?
Except for the female.
Yeah. I like that in the show. I think that's what the one thing the show does kind of right. It really shows the difference between like normal humans, like not fighting for their humanity, but like it's the one, I think, decent thing they do right in the show. Whereas,
yeah, I mean, like putting in like the capitalist lens, it's like the lower class going up against the upper class.
Right. Yeah. Whereas in the comic, and like the show does have a good take on like the capitalism part, like you're bringing up, Kevin. Like it does hit that pretty well, I would say, especially with
nice.
Giancarlo's character, Giancarlo Esposito in season 2.
Yes.
But yeah, besides that, like in the comic, them having powers just is like kind of defeats the purpose of the boys.
When like Billy injected Huey with with Blue, I was like, wait, what? And Butcher's like, yeah, I have powers. I took it already long ago. I'm like, what? Like, there's a lot of things that's just kind of coming out of nowhere. It just doesn't. Yeah, them having powers just doesn't feel right. Like I get it in the sense of the world building where it's like, yeah, if you want to fight against a super, you can't just be normal.
Well, yeah. Go ahead, Ryan. I want to let you talk. Go ahead.
It takes that I don't know if you've ever read Injustice or played the game, but like it takes that whole concept of, hey, we took the super pill so we can fight against Superman.
Yeah, I remember that.
Makes it terrible. Like that already. The only reason they did the whole pill thing was just so that it made sense for a fighting game when you're fighting Superman and not getting thrown out a window.
Right. And the concept of boys, it's like it takes away a lot of potential storytelling of like forcing your characters to think their way through a situation.
Well, to build off of that real fast, like when you talk about that mirror holding up that like self-reflection of like in a capitalistic society, like, okay, yeah, the superheroes are terrible, but like you could argue the boys are just as terrible. Like they're just the villains. We're following this from like a quote, like a bog standard like comic run, like. We're just following from the villain's perspective, and it doesn't really add anything to the narrative.
Yeah,
if they had no powers, it would just be like, oh, okay, like they're fighting for something. They have stakes.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I mean, that's what I'm kind of like. I want to like. Oh, well, you can go ahead, Ryan, real quick.
Well, I was gonna say like Frenchie and the female are like basically like criminally insane in this. Like they're terrible people. Like in the show, like Frenchie is still like a drug dealer and everything, but like he's like still has like kind of a heart of gold kind of thing going on.
He has characterization.
Like
he's a character.
Yeah. Like he cares about the female. He cares about the rest of his friends. He feels remorse for some of the things he's done. But at the same time, he's like, all right, like it's interesting that these characters are they're a little bit more mother's milk. In the comic, he's still an like halfway decent person. But like in the show, he's basically the conscience for the team besides Huey.
He's the soul. He's one of the soul pieces, like Huey.
Yeah,
because he basically tries to pull them back and says, "Hey, we shouldn't be trying to do all this stuff."
Mm-hmm.
Have you guys read Animal Farm at all?
I have. I did in high school. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm wondering. Well, the reason why I want to wiki the ending of The Boys because I want to see if maybe it's like an Animal Farm type situation where they overthrow the people in power, but then they become the one. The boys become the one in power, but then they end up being just as bad, if not worse, than the Seven.
Ryan, has The Boys ended?
The comic is over.
The comic ended.
Okay, that's why. Okay, I didn't know if it did or not.
The show hasn't.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
Because like that would kind of help a little bit with thematically if it does end up like being like basically Animal Farm but superheroes, but I don't know how much though.
Full spoilers. I know Butcher becomes kind of a villain.
I mean, I feel like that the seeds are there for that.
Yeah.
So that makes sense. But with Animal Farm was about communism and how just communism as a whole it's very anti-communist.
Right.
And so but it's like, but it's more like anti-communist in the way that like there's no such thing as a perfect leader. Like humans are very fallible leaders. And like, and then people who are from the bottom that suddenly take over, they don't have the knowledge to understand like how a system actually works. So therefore, like if you put someone who's knowledgeable of the situation in charge, they're going to abuse the situation. If you're going to put someone unknowledgeable in charge, the system's going to break itself anyway.
Right.
So I'm just wondering if that's what The Boys is going for. Like it's just Animal Farm but superheroes. But I'll have to wiki the ending to be sure.
Any final thoughts we want to wrap up or say before we wrap up?
Man, I do love Invincible.
Yeah, Ryan.
I say that The Boys comic makes me appreciate the show more because
that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
The show takes this comic and makes it 100 times better. The Boys makes me appreciate Invincible more, but it also makes me realize that My Hero, Academia, and Young Justice are the best superhero shows out there, and also better subversions of the superhero genre.
I'm just gonna flat out say The Boys is pointless. They're not even adding anything to the conversation. Like you can like find a piece of media that's bad, and you'd be like, okay, don't do that. The Boys isn't that. It's just it's garbage. It's garbly goop. That's really all it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'll still check out the show at some point because I want it maybe when it's over, so that way like I can at least see where the show was trying to do by the end of it.
I don't know if we'll. I think I think The Boys is like full throttle. I think we'll get at least 6 seasons of The Boys.
Oh man.
Yeah, I say the show is good. It's worth watching, especially for some of those character dynamics that you will never probably see in the comics. Because I still say Mother's Milk is one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, he's really well done in the show. Amazon needs you're talking about like Disney milking money. Like Amazon needs like stuff to pull onto Amazon Prime, and they're gonna.
Amazon needs The Boys.
Yeah, Amazon needs The Boys. They're gonna need to get as many seasons out of The Boys as they can.
The Boys and Invincible is like what kicked Amazon into high gear this past few years.
Oh yeah, like with Invincible, like because of Invincible's success, they've got like Vox Machina as well, and then also Boys animated show from the same studio.
Oh yeah,
the animated Invincible.
Mm-hmm.
I did watch the first 2 episodes of Vox Machina. That's an interesting concept.
Yeah, I've only watched the first. I only watched the first episode. I was like, I'll maybe wait a little bit on this.
Yeah, it definitely has that Boys feel to it, but
I mean, like, maybe we'll talk about it in our Patreon exclusive portion. Because I have a whole thing about like adapting Dungeons and Dragons campaigns into like other forms of media.
God,
It usually
you're a
does not
nerd.
translate well.
God, you're
No,
a
it
nerd.
doesn't. It does not translate well.
I know. I'm just kidding.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
But yeah, so like I said, Garth Ennis, I haven't read any other of his work except for Sarah from TKO Studios, and Sarah is a very good graphic novel. Like TKO Studios in general is a very good indie publisher. I highly recommend checking out their work.
Well, Kevin, Garth is just a blind squirrel who finds a nut every once in a while.
He's a broken clock, but he's right twice a day.
I'll turn a Committed Critics into a Garth Ennis slander podcast.
I mean, I think you should do more research before you slander someone.
It's fine.
Hey, it's the internet. Who does research?
It's the internet.
Exactly.
So, Zach, it is your turn to challenge us with something. What you got?
We got Encanto. I want something happy. I want something fun. I want some
That's fair.
music.
Oh, I will say, though, like, as soon as I finished reading the omnibus last night for the boys, I was like, man, I got an hour left before I actually need to go to sleep. It's like, but I want something happy. So I started reading. I reread the first volume of Radiant Black.
I love that for you.
You
I
need
was waiting for you to say,
something-
It's just
like,
something.
take
It's
a
more
shower.
color. It's more colorful. It's more vibrant, and it does like realistic superheroes better.
I'm glad you had that thought, Kevin, because I had to go take a shower. I felt disgusting after it.
I was gonna say more
Vindication.
realistic superheroes, but
What?
no, you need something happy afterwards.
Yeah. If you want something happy, Radiant Black is a good one. Also, Seven Secrets is very good too. I think
If you
that
want
might
something
actually be
happy,
ending soon.
Check out our full
Encanto.
Patreon episode that's coming out after this. That'll make you super happy. There we go. Look at that segue.
Linked in the description. On that note, we can follow us on Twitter at Committed Chris. That's YoMMITTEDCRITS. On YouTube, Committed Critics, spelled the same there. It is here everywhere else. TikTok at Committed Critics, spelled the same here. It is everywhere else. And thank you to our current patrons, David Pepper from Game Mechanics, Ryan Kowalkowski from Ryan Plays Drums, Andy Phillips from Andy Phillips, Jody Wright, and Devin Vonderhyde. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.